You've probably spent your entire life thinking intelligence looks a certain way: the straight-A student, the chess prodigy, the person who always has the answer. But what if I told you that the quietest person in the room, the one who forgets where they put their keys, the one who everyone thinks is just odd, what if they're the ones operating on a completely different cognitive level? Neuroscience has identified patterns, behaviors most people dismiss as quirks or flaws, and these patterns, they don't show up on IQ tests, they show up in how you think when no one's watching. Intelligence isn't what we've been taught to recognize. It's not about memorization or speed, it's about how your brain processes complexity, contradiction, and uncertainty. And here's the uncomfortable part. If you have these habits, you've likely spent years thinking something was wrong with you, when in reality, your mind was just refusing to work the way everyone else's does. Pattern 1. Talking to yourself. Let's start with something you probably do when you're alone. You talk to yourself, out loud. Full conversations, sometimes you even argue with yourself. Most people hide this. They think it makes them look unstable. But here's what's actually happening. Your brain is using auditory feedback to strengthen neural pathways. When you verbalize a thought, you're not just thinking it, you're testing it, refining it, catching logical inconsistencies that silent thought would miss. There's a reason writers pace and mutter, mathematicians whisper equations, because language isn't just communication, it's architecture, and intelligent minds instinctively know that speaking creates structure. So if you've ever felt embarrassed about talking to yourself, stop. Your brain is working exactly the way it's supposed to. Pattern 2, chronic overthinking. Here's one people love to pathologize. You overthink everything. You can't make a simple decision without considering 17 different angles. You replay conversations days after they happened, analyzing subtext, tone, microexpressions. You lie awake constructing elaborate mental simulations of futures that may never happen. And everyone tells you to stop. You're too in your head. Just relax. But what they're really saying is, your processing depth makes them uncomfortable. Because here's the truth, intelligent minds don't just think, they model, they simulate, they run probabilistic scenarios across multiple timelines simultaneously. What looks like anxiety to an outside observer is actually your brain refusing to settle for surface-level understanding. The cost? You'll never have the luxury of ignorance. The benefit? You see patterns emerging long before anyone else does. Pattern 3, messy environments. Walk into a genius's workspace and you'll rarely find order. Papers scattered, coffee cups from 3 days ago, books stacked in what appears to be chaos, but is actually a deeply intuitive organizational system only they understand. There's a reason for this. Intelligent minds operate in what psychologists call productive chaos. Your brain isn't wasting processing power on arbitrary organizational systems. Instead, it's creating a physical map that mirrors your mental associations. That pile of papers? It's not mess. It's a 3-dimensional index of interconnected ideas. And when you need something, you know exactly where it is, not because you filed it logically, but because you remember the context of when you placed it there. Pattern 4, staying up late. You've probably been told your entire life that you need to fix your sleep schedule. But here's what no one mentions. Night owls show consistently higher IQ scores than early risers. Not because staying up late makes you smarter, but because intelligent minds are naturally drawn to novelty. And for most of human history, nighttime was the most novel, most dangerous time to be awake. Your brain doesn't follow circadian norms because it's curious about what happens when everyone else shuts down. It's the same impulse that drives exploration, invention, and every significant intellectual breakthrough in history. So when you're wide awake at 2 a.m., mind racing with ideas while the rest of the world sleeps, that's not insomnia, that's your brain operating in its native time zone. Pattern 5, constant daydreaming. You zone out in the middle of conversations. You stare at walls, you lose track of time watching patterns in wood grain, or water, or the way light moves across surfaces, and everyone assumes you're not paying attention, that you're disconnected, lazy even. But brain imaging studies tell a different story. When you daydream, your default mode network activates, the same network responsible for creativity, problem solving, and what neuroscientists call spontaneous cognition. Intelligent people don't daydream because they're bored. They daydream because their brains are constantly running background processes, connecting unrelated concepts, testing hypotheses, building mental models of complex systems. That blank stare, that's not absence, that's computation. Pattern 6, preferring solitude. You don't hate people. You're not antisocial. You just need extended periods of time completely alone. And here's why that matters. Intelligence correlates inversely with social satisfaction. The smarter you are, the less you need constant social stimulation, not because you're cold or detached, but because your internal world is rich enough to sustain you. Social interaction for most people is entertainment. For intelligent minds, it's often draining because you're not just having a conversation, you're tracking subtext, predicting responses, managing group dynamics, all while pretending it comes naturally. Solitude isn't loneliness. It's the environment where your mind finally gets to run at full capacity without performance pressure. Pattern 7. Unusual sense of humor. Your humor doesn't land. You make connections that seem random. You laugh at things others don't find funny. And when someone explains a joke, you don't think it's funny anymore. That's because intelligent humor operates on layered meaning. You're not laughing at the surface level punchline. You're laughing at the conceptual absurdity 3 levels deep that most people don't even register. It's why the smartest comedians often seem dark or weird. They're not trying to be edgy. They're just working with a cognitive framework that sees irony, contradiction, and pattern recognition as inherently funny. If your jokes consistently confuse people, you're not bad at humor, you're just playing a different game. Pattern 8. Strategic procrastination. You wait until the last minute, always, and people assume you're lazy or disorganized. But here's what they don't understand: you're not avoiding work. You're waiting for the right cognitive state. Intelligent procrastinators unconsciously optimize for peak performance. You know instinctively that forcing productivity during a low-energy state produces mediocre results. So you wait. You let ideas incubate. You trust that when the pressure finally arrives, your brain will activate the focus and clarity you need. And it does, every time. This isn't poor time management, it's sophisticated self-knowledge. You've learned that your brain works best under specific conditions, and you've built your workflow around that truth, even if it looks reckless to everyone else. Pattern 9. Questioning everything. You can't accept answers at face value. You need to understand not just what, but why, and how, and what happens if we change one variable. This drives people insane. They think you're being difficult, contrarian. But you're not arguing for the sake of arguing, you're stress-testing logic. Because intelligent minds know that most explanations are incomplete. Most facts are actually assumptions, and the only way to separate truth from consensus is to push on every claim until it either holds or breaks. This makes you exhausting to debate. It also makes you right more often than most people are comfortable admitting. Pattern 10. Forgetting basic things. You lose your keys, you forget appointments, you walk into a room and have no idea why you're there, and everyone assumes you're scatterbrained. But here's the reality. Your working memory isn't designed for mundane details. It's allocated to complex problem-solving, abstract reasoning, and pattern synthesis. This is why brilliant people are often terrible at basic life skills, not because they're incapable, but because their cognitive resources are allocated elsewhere. Forgetting where you parked isn't a flaw. It's the cost of thinking 5 steps ahead of everyone else. And here's the part no one talks about. If you have most of these habits, you've probably spent your entire life thinking you were broken, too anxious, too disorganized, too weird, because intelligence, real intelligence, doesn't look like what we've been taught. It doesn't announce itself with perfect grades or eloquent speeches. It shows up quietly, in the way you process information when no one's watching, in the patterns you see that others walk right past. And the cruelest irony? The smarter you are, the more aware you become of how much you don't know. So while everyone else operates with comfortable certainty, you're left questioning everything, including whether you're actually intelligent at all. That doubt, that's not imposter syndrome, that's metacognition, and it's one of the clearest markers of a sophisticated mind. So if you recognized yourself in these patterns, here's what you need to understand. You're not broken, you're not doing life wrong, you're just operating with cognitive architecture that wasn't designed for small talk, clean desks, and 9-to-5 schedules, and that's going to feel isolating. Because most people won't understand why you think the way you do. They'll tell you to change, to fit in, to stop overthinking, stop questioning, stop being so much. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The world doesn't need more people who think the same way. It needs minds that refuse to. The question isn't whether you're intelligent. The question is whether you're willing to accept that intelligence comes with a cost, and whether you're brave enough to pay it. If this video helped you understand your mind a little better, consider subscribing. There's a lot more to explore, and I'd like you to be here for it.